What if the chilling stories whispered around ancient campfires weren't just tales but warnings? Long before science could explain the mysteries of the world, our ancestors spun legends so terrifying they've haunted humanity for centuries. These weren't just stories to pass the time. They were born from the shadows of the unknown, crafted to make sense of disasters, disappearances, and the eerie phenomena that defied understanding. From bloodthirsty spirits lurking in the forests to gods who demanded unspeakable sacrifices, these myths tap into something primal, the universal fear of what waits just beyond the flickering light of the fire. Tonight, we're stepping into that darkness. Across continents and millennia, every culture has its own nightmare, a creature, a curse, or an omen so unsettling it's been carved into temples, scribbled onto scrolls, and passed down through generations like a cursed inheritance. Some of these legends were meant to keep children from wandering too far. Others, they might have been desperate attempts to explain real, unexplainable horrors. Because here's the thing, when the wind howls a little too much like a human scream or the shadows move just wrong, it's hard not to wonder if our ancestors knew something we've forgotten. So light a torch and keep it close. We're about to unearth 25 of the most spine-tingling legends from ancient cultures' tales that still raise the hairs on the back of your neck. You'll meet spectral women who drown the unwary, shape-shifting monsters that wear human skin, and curses so potent they echo across thousands of years. These stories aren't just relics of the past, they're mirrors reflecting our deepest fears. Because no matter how advanced we become, some questions remain. What really lurks in the dark? And why do these legends still have the power to make us glance over our shoulders, even now? The answers might be more unsettling than you think. The air was thick with incense and whispered prayers when Howard Carter first breached the sealed doorway of Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922. As the flickering torchlight revealed treasures untouched for over 3,000 years, the world marveled, but not everyone would live to celebrate the discovery. Within months, Lord Carnarvon, the expedition's financier, was dead, succumbing to a mysterious infection after a mosquito bite. Newspapers claimed it was the Pharaoh's vengeance, a curse unleashed upon those who dared disturb his eternal rest. The legend of the Pharaoh's curse wasn't born that day, though. Ancient Egyptians believed in Mat, divine order, and tombs were protected by spells meant to punish thieves. Hieroglyphs warned of death coming on swift wings for trespassers, and as more expedition members fell ill or died unexpectedly, superstition took hold. A prominent skeptic pointed out that Carter himself lived another 16 years, yet the rumor persisted, fueled by eerie coincidences. A canary brought into the tomb was said to have been eaten by a cobra, the symbol of Egyptian royalty, on the very day of the opening. Electrical failures plagued Cairo when the mummy was examined, and some swore they heard ghostly wails echoing through the valley. Modern scholars dismiss the curse as confirmation bias. After all, in an era before antibiotics, infections were common. But the deeper truth is far more chilling. The curse worked because people believed it did. Fear became a self-fulfilling prophecy, twisting misfortune into supernatural retribution. Even today, museums display Tutankhamun's treasures with unease, as if those golden artifacts still hum with the old warning. Some doors were never meant to be opened. In the dim candlelight of a rabbi's study, ancient texts speak of something far more terrifying than mere ghosts: a Dybbuk, a soul so tormented it refuses to move on. Unlike ordinary spirits, this one doesn't just haunt, it claws its way into the living, twisting their bodies and voices into something unrecognizable. Rooted in Jewish mysticism, the Dybbuk emerges from Kabbalistic beliefs about the afterlife, where souls that committed grave sins or died with unfinished business are denied peace. Trapped between worlds, they seek refuge in the flesh of the innocent, turning their hosts into prisoners of their own minds. The word Dybbuk itself means to cling, and these entities were said to latch onto the vulnerable, those burdened by grief, illness, or hidden guilt. Accounts from 16th century Eastern Europe describe victims suddenly speaking in voices not their own, convulsing with inhuman strength, or revealing secrets they couldn't possibly know. One chilling case tells of a young bride who began reciting prayers in Aramaic, a language she'd never learned, while her eyes rolled back into her head. Terrified families would rush to a Baal Shem, a master of Kabbalah, who'd perform a grueling exorcism known as a din Torah. These rituals weren't for the faint of heart. The rabbi would surround the possessed with a minyan, 10 righteous men, while blowing a shofar and burning sacred herbs. Through intense prayer and negotiation, they'd confront the Dybbuk, demanding its name and sins, sometimes even bargaining for its release. In one documented exorcism from 17th century Poland, the spirit confessed to being a murderer in life, and only after the rabbi promised to atone for its sins did it finally depart, leaving the host gasping and weak. What makes the Dybbuk legend endure isn't just its horror, but its haunting humanity. These weren't mindless monsters, they were lost souls, desperate and angry. Some scholars suggest the tales served as cautionary metaphors, warnings against unresolved trauma or the dangers of straying from faith. Even today, the Dybbuk lingers in modern culture, from plays to horror films, a reminder that some wounds don't stay buried. Because if a spirit can wear a person like a mask, how do we know who's truly looking back at us from the mirror? The wail cuts through the night like a blade, a woman sobbing, raw with a grief so deep it chills the blood. She calls for her children, but the river only answers with silence. This is La Llorona, the weeping woman, a specter etched into the nightmares of generations across Latin America. Her story begins long before the Spanish conquest, woven into the fabric of Aztec lore. The goddess Cihuacotl, a divine figure of motherhood and midwifery, was said to wander at night, crying for her lost child, a prophecy of the fall of the Aztec Empire. When colonizers arrived, her myth merged with a darker tale, a mortal woman scorned by her lover who drowned their children in a fit of madness. Realizing her crime too late, she drowned herself in anguish, condemned to wander forever, dragging her sodden skirts along riverbanks, searching for souls to replace those she stole. In Mexico, she's a cautionary figure, blamed for missing children near waterways. Parents warn that her bony fingers will snatch the disobedient, pulling them into the depths. But travel south to Guatemala, and La Llorona becomes more ghost than monster, a mournful guide, her cries signaling approaching death. In New Mexico, she's intertwined with La Malinche, the indigenous woman who aided Cortés, her betrayal punished by the loss of her own children. Psychologists see her as a manifestation of collective guilt, a symbol of the trauma inflicted by colonization and the impossible standards placed on women. Yet what makes La Llorona endure isn't just her horror, it's her heartbreaking humanity. She isn't a mindless killer, but a mother shattered by loss, a mirror to our deepest fears of abandonment and failure. Folklorists note how her story bends to fit the anxieties of each era, from post-colonial shame to modern fears of parental neglect. Even now, on foggy nights near lonely rivers, some swear they hear her weeping not just for her children, but for all the love that ends in tragedy. Because in the end, La Llorona isn't just a legend. She's the echo of every grief too heavy to bear alone. The night wind carries more than just the scent of damp earth. Sometimes it brings the thunder of hooves and the clatter of armor. Across the misty highlands of Scotland, the deep forests of Germany, and even the quiet valleys of New York, one figure rides eternally, the headless horseman. This terrifying specter wasn't born from Washington Irving's imagination, but from much older, darker roots. In Celtic lore, he's the Dullahan, a fairy of death who carries his severed head under one arm, its grinning mouth stretched wide in a permanent scream. If he stops riding, someone dies. If he calls your name, your soul is already forfeit. the Dullahan wasn't alone. He was part of the Wild Hunt, a phantom cavalcade led by gods like Odin or the Welsh Gwyn ap Nudd. These spectral riders stormed across the sky during storms or on Samhain, sweeping up the souls of the unwary. Germanic legends whispered that hearing the hunt meant doom. To look upon them was to be dragged into their nightmare procession. But why a headless rider? Scholars point to ancient battlefield rituals. Celtic warriors believed the head housed the soul, and enemies would decapitate the dead to prevent vengeance from beyond the grave. The Horseman, then, is a walking atrocity, a soldier denied even the dignity of burial. Irving's legend of Sleepy Hollow softened the horror but sharpened the dread. His horseman wasn't a fairy but a Hessian mercenary, beheaded by a cannonball in the American Revolution, forever seeking a replacement. The story's genius was making him ambiguous. Was he a ghost, a prank, or the embodiment of Ichabod Crane's cowardice? That question lingers in every shadowed lane where hoofbeats echo, because the true terror of the Headless Horseman isn't just his missing head, it's the way he forces us to wonder what else might be missing. Justice, reason, or worse, proof that the stories are real. The heat of the Philippine sun fades as twilight descends, and with it comes a different kind of hunger, one that doesn't prowl on four legs but walks among the living on two. The Aswang isn't just a monster, it's a master of deception, a shapeshifter that wears the face of your neighbor by day and feasts on your kin by night. Rooted deep in Filipino folklore, this creature has 1,000 faces, 100 tricks, and one relentless appetite for human flesh. By daylight, an Aswang might appear as an ordinary villager, perhaps the quiet midwife who delivers babies or the farmer with a knowing smirk. But when darkness falls, its true form emerges. Some say it splits its body in half, the lower half sprouting bat-like wings while the torso slithers through open windows. Others claim it takes the shape of a dog, a pig, or even a grotesque bird with razor talons. No matter its form, the goal is the same: to find prey, preferably pregnant women or unbaptized children, whose tender flesh it devours with a mouthful of needle-thin teeth. Communities have developed eerie ways to unmask these predators. A bowl of raw rice placed by the door might reveal an Aswang. They're said to count every grain compulsively, trapped in their own obsession until dawn exposes them. Salt and garlic hang over cribs, and some families keep sacred vines called ajamat to ward off the creatures, but the most chilling sign, a faint inverted reflection in still water. Stare too closely, and you might see the Aswang's true face staring back smiling. The legend isn't just about fear, it's a cultural keystone. In rural areas, the Aswang explains sudden deaths, miscarriages, and disappearances, giving shape to the unexplainable. Anthropologists suggest these tales also enforced social order, warning against outsiders, infidelity, or breaking taboos. After all, if evil looks human, who can you trust? Even today, whispers of Aswang sightings persist in remote provinces, a reminder that some monsters don't just hide in shadows, they live next door. And when the night wind carries the sound of clicking claws on your roof, no lock will keep them out. Moonlight glints off stiff limbs as the figure lurches forward, not walking but hopping with unnatural precision, its arms outstretched like a puppet on tangled strings. This is the Jiangshi, China's infamous hopping vampire, a reanimated corpse clad in tattered Qing dynasty robes, its skin tinged moldy green from the grave. Unlike Western zombies, the Jiangshi isn't mindless, it's trapped, a soul bound to its decaying body by improper burial rites or unsettled grudges. Taoist traditions warn that if funeral rituals are skipped, if the corpse isn't washed, coins aren't placed on its eyes to pay the ferryman of the dead, or if it's buried facing the wrong direction, the spirit can't move on. Instead, it rises stiff with rigor mortis, forced to hop because its joints can't bend. The Jiangshi's hunger isn't for flesh but kai, life force. Folktales describe it pressing victims against walls to drain their breath, leaving them pale and lifeless. To stop one, you'd need a bag of rice. The creature compulsively counts every grain, buying time until dawn. Mirrors repel it as the undead fear their own reflection, and sticky rice scattered on the ground absorbs the corpse's lingering malice. But perhaps the eeriest detail, many Jiangshi legends emerged during the Qing dynasty when families transported dead relatives hundreds of miles for burial. Corpse handlers would rig the bodies on poles, carrying them in a bouncing motion that, in the fog, looked like, well, hopping. Now, shift your gaze to the Preta, Buddhism's hungry ghost. Unlike the Jiangshi, this isn't a physical being but a tormented spirit with a belly swollen from emptiness and a throat as thin as a needle. Born from greed, deceit, or wasted life, Pretas wander unseen, forever starving. They're caught in the cycle of samsara, punished for past actions yet unable to atone. In temples across Asia, monks leave offerings water, rice, incense not out of fear but compassion. The Preta's suffering isn't just supernatural, it's a mirror to human cruelty, a reminder that selfishness twists the soul. The contrast between these undead is stark. The Jiangshi is a failure of ritual, a corpse denied rest by human error. The Preta is a failure of morality, a soul choked by its own misdeeds. One frightens with physical horror, the other with existential dread. Yet both share a haunting lesson. The dead don't always stay gone. Some return because we forget them, others because we shouldn't. The wind howls through the pines like a starving thing, and in that sound the Algonquian peoples heard a name whispered for centuries: Wendigo. Not just a monster, but a warning carved into the bones of winter itself. Born from the harsh truths of survival in the northern forests, this creature embodies the horror of hunger turned inward, of desperation twisting the soul into something unrecognizable. According to legend, when famine gripped the land and the snows buried all hope, those who resorted to cannibalism to survive risked becoming something worse than dead. Their hearts froze, their bodies stretched gaunt and towering, with lips chewed ragged from their own gnawing hunger. Eyes glowing like embers in a skeletal face, the Wendigo was always starving, no matter how much flesh it devoured. The stories served as more than campfire tales, they were survival guides. Tribes described the Wendigo's curse as highly contagious, spreading through the act of eating human flesh or even through the greed it represented. Some versions claim the creature could possess the living, driving them to violence during the Wendigo psychosis, a term later adopted by psychologists to describe a rare cultural-bound syndrome involving compulsive cannibalistic urges. But the Wendigo wasn't just a physical threat, it was a moral boundary. Oral traditions often depicted it as once human, a neighbor or relative who'd crossed an unthinkable line. In this way, the legend reinforced communal values, sharing resources, respecting taboos, and resisting the dehumanization that comes with extreme scarcity. Modern interpretations have stretched the Wendigo's symbolism far beyond the frozen woods. Environmentalists invoke it as a metaphor for colonialism's insatiable consumption, while horror writers reimagine it as a manifestation of addiction or capitalism's endless hunger for growth. Yet the most haunting truth lies in its origin. When anthropologists studied historical records, they found chilling correlations between Wendigo sightings and real periods of famine, like the brutal winter of 1883, when entire Ojibwe villages faced starvation. The monster, it seems, was never just a myth, it was the shadow cast by humanity's darkest choices. Today, the Wendigo endures as both caution and confession. It asks us, what lines would we cross to survive, and what becomes of us if we do? Because the real horror isn't the creature lurking in the blizzard, it's the understanding that, given enough hunger, any of us could hear the whispers calling our name. The snow doesn't just fall in the mountains of Japan, it watches, drifts part to reveal a figure as pale as the moon, her kimono blending with the blizzard, her lips blue with cold that doesn't touch her. This is the Yuki-onna, the snow woman, a spirit as beautiful as she is deadly. She glides across the frozen landscape without footprints, her breath a silvery mist that carries whispers of forgotten lovers. But reach for her, and her delicate fingers turn to ice, stealing the warmth from your veins with a single touch. Her origins trace back to ancient Edo period folklore, where winter was a quiet killer, claiming travelers lost between villages. The Yuki-onna embodied nature's indifference, a reminder that beauty and death often walk hand in hand. In some tales, she's a vengeful ghost, like the woman discarded in the snow by a faithless husband, her spirit crystallized into something inhuman. Others paint her as an elemental force, capricious as the weather itself. One famous legend tells of a woodcutter spared by her on the condition he never speak of their encounter, only for his wife to reveal herself as the Yuki-onna years later, vanishing into the storm when he breaks his oath. The Snow Woman's elegance made her a staple of kabuki theater, where actors used billowing silk and bone-white makeup to capture her ethereal horror. In film, she evolved sometimes a tragic figure, like in Kurosawa's Dreams, where she drifts through a soldier's delirium, offering him an icy embrace. Modern manga and anime recast her as a melancholic anti-hero, her loneliness echoing Japan's urban isolation. Yet the core of her legend remains unchanged. She's winter-given form, a reminder that the world's loveliest things can be the most lethal. What makes the Yuki-onna endure isn't just her menace, but her mystery. Unlike Western ghosts, she rarely seeks revenge or justice. She simply is as inevitable as snowfall. Some scholars link her to Shinto beliefs, where spirits inhabit natural phenomena, while psychologists see her as a metaphor for hypothermia's seductive drowsiness. But perhaps the truest horror lies in her silence. She doesn't cackle or snarl as she kisses, and in that kiss the cold becomes a kind of mercy. After all, freezing to death feels like falling asleep. And when the snow finally buries you, it's almost peaceful. Almost. The first reports came in the dead of night, livestock drained of blood, puncture wounds neat as surgical incisions, and not a single drop spilled on the ground. By dawn, the name was on everyone's lips, El Chupacabra. The goat sucker burst onto the world stage in 1995, when 8 sheep were found mutilated in the small Puerto Rican town of Canavanas. But this was no ordinary predator. Farmers swore the creature had glowing red eyes, leathery gray skin stretched over a spine like a dinosaur's, and quills running down its back. Some claimed it walked upright, others insisted it lurched on all fours like a hairless coyote. Within months, the hysteria spread across Latin America, then leaped continents, evolving with every retelling. Scientists scrambled to explain the phenomenon. The most plausible theory pointed to mange-ridden coyotes or wild dogs, their grotesque appearance amplified by fear. Yet the details didn't add up. How could a starving animal leave carcasses untouched except for 2 precise holes near the jugular? Why did some witnesses describe a creature leaping 20-foot fences or vanishing into thin air? Skeptics noted the timing. Puerto Rico was reeling from economic strain and U.S. military testing on the island of Weeks, fueling conspiracy theories. Was the Chupacabra a government experiment gone wrong, a misidentified alien, or something older, dredged up from Taino folklore about shadowy forest spirits? The legend's grip on pop culture was instant. Tabloids splashed Chupacabra headlines next to Elvis sightings. Cartoons and horror films turned it into a kitschy villain, while Puerto Rican communities embraced it as a dark mascot, proof that their island's mysteries couldn't be contained. Even today, sightings persist from Texas backroads to Russian farmlands, each version adapting to local fears. A Texas rancher might blame the Chupacabra for missing chickens, describing a scaly, dog-like beast, far from the original spined monstrosity. What makes the Chupacabra more than just a cryptid is its refusal to fade. It's a Rorschach test for collective anxiety, morphing to embody everything from distrust of authority to ecological dread. Because in the end, the truth isn't about what's out there, It's about what happens when the lights go out and the stories we tell to fill the dark. The silence before death isn't silent in Ireland. It's pierced by a wail so unnatural it freezes the blood mid-vein. This is the banshee, a spectral woman cloaked in grey, her keening echoing through the misty glens as she combs her silver hair with a bone-white brush. Unlike generic ghosts, the banshee isn't tied to a place but to bloodlines. Ancient Irish clans believed she appeared only for the O'Neills, the O'Briens, and other noble families, her cries signaling an imminent death in the household. Some described her as a withered crone, her eyes red from centuries of weeping. Others swore she was a breathtaking beauty, her lamentations sweet as a siren's song until you realized the song was yours. The banshee's origins twist back to the Bean Shea, or Woman of the Fairy Mounds, tied to the Tuatha Dé Danann, Ireland's mythical pre-Celtic gods. When Christian monks recorded these traditions, they painted her as a fallen angel, too sinful for heaven yet too divine for hell. But the banshee wasn't malicious, she was a mourner, a psychic echo of grief made flesh. Families would listen for her dirge, counting the nights between wails. 3 cries meant death was 3 days away. There's a chilling account from the 1800s of an entire village hearing her screams hours before a cholera outbreak claimed 30 lives. Skeptics blame screech owls or foxes in heat, but those who have heard it know no animal sounds that human. Now shift your gaze to the roads at twilight, where hoofbeats thunder without a horse. The Dullahan rides, his headless silhouette gripping a spine like a whip, his grinning severed head held aloft. Where the banshee warns, the Dullahan is the warning, a death omen so feared, even saying his name aloud was taboo. Irish law insists he can't be stopped. Locks snap open at his approach, and any door he passes crumbles to rot. Some say he hurls buckets of blood at those who dare watch his ride, while others claim he simply points and your soul tears free on the spot. The Dullahan's roots tangle with Crom-Dubh, a pre-Christian god of fertility and sacrifice, twisted into a monster by the church. His pumpkin-headed incarnation in Sleepy Hollow borrowed heavily from this Celtic horror, but the original was no prankster. He was the embodiment of inevitability, death as a force beyond bargaining. Families would bring offerings to crossroads, hoping to distract him from their homes. Yet the darkest tales whisper of the Dullahan's curse. If he stops riding, the world ends. Together, the banshee and Dullahan paint Ireland's relationship with mortality. One grieves, the other collects. The banshee's wail is a gift, time to say goodbye. The Dullahan offers no such mercy. These legends thrived because they gave shape to the unbearable, the randomness of loss. In a land where clans warred and famine stalked the fields, they were proof that even death had rules, or perhaps that some goodbyes are written in the wind long before we hear them. The scent of roasting meat turns rancid when the stranger smiles, his teeth too sharp, his laughter too deep. In the flickering firelight, his shadow doesn't match his form. This is no traveler seeking shelter. This is a Rakshasa, a demon woven into the very fabric of Hindu mythology, a being as cunning as it is cruel. Born from the breath of the creator god Brahma during his darkest moments, Rakshasas were never meant to be mere monsters. They are cosmic disruptors, shape-shifting lords of illusion who thrive in the space between divine order and human weakness. In texts like the Mahabharata and Ramayana, they don't just kill, they dismantle. Take the tale of the Rakshasi Hidimba, who lured warriors into her forest with the illusion of a cozy village, only to reveal her true form, a grotesque figure with claws like scythes, once they were trapped. Or Ravana, the 10-headed king of Lanka, whose intellect rivaled the gods themselves. His kidnapping of Sita wasn't just an act of lust, but a challenge to the universe's moral fabric. These beings don't merely hunger for flesh, they crave the collapse of Dharma, the sacred order that binds reality. What makes the Rakshasa uniquely terrifying isn't just its power, but its intimacy. It doesn't stalk from shadows, it slips into your home wearing the face of a friend. Ancient texts describe them as masters of disguise, capable of mimicking voices, memories, even the warmth of a loved one's touch. Some could bend reality itself, conjuring palaces out of thin air to ensnare the proud. To kill one, heroes couldn't rely on strength alone. The epic warrior Bhima had to learn sacred mantras to pierce their illusions, while Rama needed celestial weapons gifted by the gods. Yet for all their malice, Rakshasas are more than villains. They're dark reflections of human flaws, ambition without morality, desire without restraint. In some regional folklore, certain Rakshasas even aid heroes, their loyalties as fluid as their forms. This duality hints at a deeper truth. In Hinduism, even demons have a role in the cosmic balance. They test virtue, expose hypocrisy, and remind us that evil often wears a familiar face. After all, if a Rakshasa can be your neighbor, your king, or even your reflection in the water, how can you ever truly know who or what you're trusting? The laughter of a child echoes through the house, but no children live here. Beneath the crib, something small and hunched scuttles on all fours, its skin corpse gray, its eyes black as obsidian. This is no ordinary ghost. It's a Toyol, a grotesque familiar bound to its master by dark magic, a creature as pitiful as it is terrifying. In the shadowed corners of Malaysian and Indonesian folklore, these spirits are crafted from the most unthinkable ingredients: the corpse of a stillborn child, stolen from its grave and animated through forbidden rituals. The process is as cruel as the result, a hollow-eyed, fanged infant eternally hungry for mischief and blood. The Toyol isn't born evil, it's made that way. Black magicians, known as Bomo, bind the spirit with incantations and offerings, often placing a nail or needle into its skull to cement control. Some legends claim the child's own mother might be complicit, trading her grief for power. Once summoned, the Toyol obeys with the single-minded devotion of a cursed puppet. It can slip through keyholes, vanish in sunlight, and twist its rubbery limbs into impossible spaces. Its favorite task, theft. With tiny, clawed hands, it steals coins, jewelry, even the breath from a sleeping man's lips. But payment comes due. The Toyol demands drops of its master's blood, a symbiotic bond that slowly drains the summoner's vitality. Yet the Toyol's most unsettling trait is its capricious nature. Left unchecked, it turns on its keeper, mimicking a human child's tantrums with monstrous consequences. Folk tales warn of Toyols strangling pets, souring milk into poison, or giggling from the rafters as their masters waste away. To repel one, families scatter glass beads. The spirit will compulsively count them until dawn traps it in paralysis. Others hang poku iron nails above doorways, their cold metal disrupting the Toyol's magic. But the darkest truth lies in the Toyol's origins. These aren't demons conjured from nothing. They're children robbed of peace, their afterlife twisted into servitude. The legend serves as a grim parable about exploitation, a warning that some bargains corrupt both maker and made. Because if innocence can be weaponized, what does that say about the hands that wield it? The sea isn't just salt and waves along the Orkney Islands. It's a breathing thing, thick with the stench of rotting kelp when the tide pulls back. And in that reeking blackness, something stirs. The Nuckelavee isn't a ghost or a demon. It's a blasphemy of flesh, a horse and rider fused into one grotesque whole. Its skinless body glistening with veins and tendons stretched tight over screaming muscle. No hide, no hair, just raw anatomy pulsing in the open air, its breath a toxic miasma that wilts crops and spreads fever. This is no random monster. In Scottish folklore, the Nuckelavee is the embodiment of nature's wrath, a force tied to the land's oldest scars. Orcadian legends say it rises from the sea during the barren months, when winter starves both man and beast. Its very presence corrupts wells turn foul, livestock drop dead with their tongues swollen black, and plagues creep through villages like fog. Unlike most creatures of myth, the Nuckelavee has no weakness to iron or holy symbols. It fears only one thing: fresh water. pour a stream between you and the beast and it recoils, its seared flesh hissing like hot metal. Islanders would hang kelp dipped in burn water, a mix of peat and rainwater above their doors, a barrier the monster wouldn't cross. But the most chilling detail isn't its appearance or its venom, it's the intelligence behind those yellow eyes. The Nuckelavee doesn't kill mindlessly, it remembers. Fishermen who overharvested herring beds would find their nets slit open, their boats dashed against rocks by unseen hands. Families who neglected the old ways woke to find their fields salted, the earth barren for generations. Some whispers claim it's the spirit of the Norse invaders who once raided these shores, cursed to become what they feared most, a force as relentless as the tide. Modern scholars trace the legend to real horrors. The Nuckelavee's plagues mirror outbreaks of ergotism, a fungal poisoning that caused convulsions and gangrene in the Middle Ages. Its skinless form echoes medical texts describing leprosy victims. Yet even science can't explain why, to this day, Orkney locals avoid the shore at certain tides, or why the smell of burning kelp still lingers in storm winds. Perhaps some legends aren't just stories. Perhaps they're warnings carved into the bone-deep memory of a people who know how thin the line is between survival and sacrifice. Because when the waves grow quiet and the air tastes of rust and rot, you don't run. You hold your breath and you pray the water's edge is enough. Moonlight glints off yellowed bone as the Gashadokuro rises, a skeleton 15 times the size of a man, its hollow ribs creaking with the weight of centuries. This towering nightmare isn't just a random ghost, it's the culmination of suffering, born from the unburied dead of famines and wars. According to Edo period folktales, when countless corpses rot without proper rites, their collective rage and hunger fuse into a single skeletal titan. It stalks the countryside after midnight, its teeth chattering like screeching pottery, seizing victims to crush in its palms or bite clean in half. But the worst part: you won't hear it coming. The Gashadokuro moves in perfect silence, its presence only betrayed by a sudden, unbearable ringing in the ears, a death knell for whoever crosses its path. The legend served as more than just a scare tactic. In feudal Japan, where mass graves were common after battles or plagues, the Gashadokuro was a grim reminder to honor the dead. Farmers left offerings at unmarked burial sites, while villages held lantern ceremonies to appease wandering spirits. Modern scholars note how the creature's origins mirror historical traumas. The Great Kyoho famine of the 1700s, where thousands starved, or the bloody aftermath of the Sengoku Wars. Even today, construction projects sometimes halt when workers uncover ancient bones, fearing the unrest that might follow if they're disturbed. Now, shift your gaze from the colossal to the uncannily intimate. The Nuckelavee, a ghost so ordinary you might bump into it on a crowded street. By day, it looks human. By night, it's still human until it turns around. The faceless specter doesn't leer or snarl. It simply erases its features with a swipe of its hand, leaving smooth, blank skin where eyes and mouth should be. Traditional tales paint it as a prankster, startling travelers on lonely roads, but its modern incarnations are far more sinister. Urban legends tell of Nuckelavee mimicking loved ones, their familiar voice calling your name before their face melts away mid-conversation. What makes these spirits so unsettling is their contrast. The Gashadokuro represents collective terror, the weight of history's atrocities given form. The Nuckelavee embodies personal dread, the horror of realizing you can't trust the face staring back at you. One crushes villages, the other shatters psyches. Yet both share a chilling purpose, their manifestations of societal fears. The Gashadokuro warns against forgetting the dead. The Nuckelavee preys on the anonymity of urban life, where strangers pass like shadows. In a way, these legends bookend Japanese horror. The Gashadokuro is the past's vengeance, a relic of old wounds. The Nuckelavee is the modern world's alienation, a reflection of cities where no one truly sees each other. One rattles the earth with its footsteps, The other leaves no trace at all except the slow, creeping doubt that maybe, just maybe, the person beside you isn't a person at all. In the misty hollows of Ireland, where the hedgerows hum with unseen life, there's a whisper that follows the wind Púca. Not quite devil, not quite savior, this shapeshifter wears 100 faces, each more unsettling than the last. One moment, it's a sleek black horse with golden eyes, luring riders onto its back only to gallop them toward cliffs, then vanish at the edge. The next, it's a ragged goat perched on a stone wall, its grin too wide for any natural creature. But the Púca isn't just a predator, it's a paradox as likely to lead a lost child home as it is to sour the milk in your churn. Celtic lore paints the Púca as a creature of thresholds, thriving in the liminal spaces, dusk and dawn, the turn of the seasons, the unspoken moment between life and death. Farmers left offerings of grain at Samhain, knowing the Púca could either bless their harvest or trample it into mud. Some legends claim it speaks in human tongues, dispensing cryptic advice or riddles that curse or cure depending on how they're answered. In County Kerry, there's a tale of a drunkard who stumbled upon a Púca disguised as an old man by the roadside. When he shared his whiskey, the creature revealed hidden gold. But when a greedy neighbor tried the same trick, he woke up knee-deep in a bog, his pockets full of rotting leaves. What makes the Púca endure isn't just its mischief, but its mercurial morality. Unlike banshees or dullahans, it defies easy categorization. In one village, it might be blamed for stolen laundry or spooked cattle. In another, credited for guiding ships through storms in the form of a glowing hare. Folklorists trace this duality to pre-Christian beliefs, where the Púca may have been a lesser deity, a trickster god demoted by the church into something more sinister. Yet even in modern retellings, the creature resists simplification. It's both the shadow that dogs your footsteps and the hand that pulls you back from the brink. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of the Púca is its intimacy. It doesn't haunt castles or battlefields, it lingers in barns and crossroads, in the laughter of your neighbor's child that sounds just a little too sharp. The Irish didn't fear the Púca because it was evil. They feared it because it was close, a reminder that magic wasn't confined to distant glens but woven into the fabric of everyday life. So next time you see a crow watching you a beat too long, or feel an unseen nudge at your back on a foggy path, ask yourself, is it the wind or something older waiting to see what you'll do next? The earth heaves as if something beneath it is breathing, a slow, deliberate swell of soil and stone that sends ravens scattering from the burial mound. In Norse sagas, this is the first warning. The Draugr isn't just a corpse, it's a corpse that refuses to stay dead, swollen with supernatural rage and strength enough to crush a man's skull bare-handed. Vikings didn't fear these creatures as mere monsters, they feared them as guardians, the enforcers of a sacred boundary between the living and the dead. To understand the Draugr, you must first grasp how the Norse viewed death. Dying in battle might earn you a seat in Valhalla, but perish from sickness or old age, and you risked a far darker fate. The afterlife wasn't guaranteed. Without proper rites, the dead could cling to their graves, festering with jealousy for the living. The Draugr embodied this limbo, a reanimated corpse bloated with decay, its skin blackened as if charred from within, its eyes glowing like embers in a forge. Some sagas describe them as shapeshifters, able to grow to monstrous sizes or dissolve into mist to seep through cracks in tomb walls. Burial mounds weren't just graves, they were treasure vaults stocked with weapons, jewelry, and even sacrificed horses for the journey beyond. The Draugr's role to ensure no one stole what belonged to the dead. The Eyjabygja saga recounts the tale of Thorolf, a chieftain so ill-tempered in life that in death, he haunted the hillside, killing anyone who dared approach his mound. His body was found uncorrupted, his nails still growing, his frame so heavy it took 12 men to lift him for reburial, a clear sign of his unholy vitality. But the Draugr's horror wasn't just physical. They carried a curse in their touch, a rot that could spread to crops, livestock, or even the air itself. One account tells of a shepherd who stumbled upon an open mound. By morning, his skin had turned blue-black, his breath reeking of spoiled meat. To defeat a Draugr required more than brute force. Heroes like Grettir the Strong learned to grapple them in ritual combat, decapitating the corpse, burning the remains, and sometimes even driving spikes through the feet to pin the spirit to the earth. Modern excavations reveal eerie truths behind the legends. Some Viking graves show signs of post-mortem mutilation, bodies weighed down with stones, heads severed and placed between the knees, precautions against the dead walking. Archaeologists unearthed one skeleton in Denmark with a knife still embedded in its spine, a chilling echo of sagas where Draugr were killed again to ensure they stayed down. The Draugr's legacy endures because it speaks to something primal, the terror of what we leave behind. These weren't mindless zombies, they were manifestations of grief, greed, and unresolved fury. Vikings didn't just bury their dead, they barricaded them, as if the real danger wasn't the corpse but the unfinished business pulsing within it. So the next time you pass an old grave, walk softly. Some doors aren't meant to be opened, and some guardians never sleep. The crunch of twigs underfoot sounds too loud in the Philippine jungle, almost as if something else is matching your steps just out of sight. That's when you catch the stench of wet fur and rotting leaves, and the shape between the trees resolves into something impossible. A creature towering 7 feet tall, its sinewy human torso fused to the powerful legs of a horse, its elongated face crowned with jagged yellow teeth and eyes that burn like swamp fires. This is the Tikbalang, no mere forest spirit but a master of deception, weaving illusions so potent, travelers wander for days in circles, their compasses spinning uselessly as the trees themselves seem to shift around them. Ancient Tagalog lore paints the Tikbalang as both trickster and omen. Some tales say they're the vengeful spirits of aborted fetuses or illegitimate children condemned to roam the wild. Others claim they're guardians of the mountains, testing intruders with their games. But one thing's certain, encounter one in the wrong mood, and it won't just lead you astray, it'll ride you like a beast, its clawed hands tangled in your hair as it gallops you through thorns until your skin hangs in ribbons. Yet there's a twisted logic to its cruelty. Farmers whisper that Tikbalangs punish those who disrespect the land, snapping the necks of loggers who cut sacred trees or drowning miners who tunnel too greedily into the earth. Survival hinges on outsmarting the creature's illusions. Folk remedies passed down for generations teach that turning your shirt inside out disrupts the Tikbalang's magic, breaking its hold on your senses. Others swear by holding your breath when crossing rivers the demon can't mimic the sound of water, revealing which paths are real. The bravest souls might try bargaining, offering tobacco or sweets to appease it. But the most effective trick, asking politely for permission to pass. Tikbalangs, for all their ferocity, adhere to an ancient code of etiquette, refuse to show fear, and sometimes, just sometimes, the creature might tilt its head in something like respect before vanishing into the mist. What makes the Tikbalang endure isn't just its horror, but its ambiguity. Unlike Western demons, it isn't purely evil. In some provinces, it's even considered a protector, scaring away bandits or guiding lost children home. This duality reflects the Filipino relationship with nature, a mix of reverence and wariness. The jungle gives life, but it also takes. The Tikbalang embodies that balance, a reminder that not all monsters want you dead. Some just want you to remember your place, so next time the path ahead twists unnaturally, or the air thickens with the scent of damp horsehair, don't run. Stand your ground, and if you're very lucky, you might hear the click of hooves fading into the distance, not a threat but a warning. The forest is watching. And it has rules. The warm tropical night is shattered by a wet, slithering sound, something floating just above the ground, trailing glistening strands of intestine behind it like macabre streamers. This is the Penanggalan, a disembodied female head with spine still attached, her organs dangling beneath her as she drifts through Malay villages in search of her favorite prey, pregnant women and newborns. According to legend, this grotesque apparition was once a mortal woman, either a midwife who dabbled in black magic or a bride betrayed on her wedding night. Now, by day, she appears human, perhaps the charming healer down the road, but come dusk, she detaches her head, leaving her lower body soaking in a vat of vinegar to prevent decomposition while she hunts. The Penanggalan's method of feeding is particularly chilling. She doesn't just kill, she poisons. Hovering over homes, she extends her elongated tongue to lick at doorframes or clothing, leaving a toxic residue that induces fever and hemorrhage. New mothers are her preferred targets, their weakened state making them vulnerable to her curses. Protective measures against her read like a witch's shopping list. Thorns scattered on rooftops to snag her entrails, crushed glass mixed into vinegar jars her hiding spots, and most disturbing of all, the husks of sticky rice hung near cribs, said to entangle her organs if she gets too close. Now shift your gaze to the banana tree groves, where a faint, lilting cry rises like a lost melody. Here lurks the Pontianak, another spirit tied to childbirth, but with a rage far more personal. She's the ghost of a woman who died in labor, her vengeance sharpened by the betrayal of love. Unlike the floating Penanggalan, she appears stunningly beautiful until she turns, revealing the gaping hole in her back where her unborn child was torn from her. Her tactics are more visceral. She mimics the wail of an infant to lure men into the darkness before shredding them with claws hidden beneath her flowing hair. Some legends claim nailing a sharp object into the hole in her spine can tame her, turning her temporarily human, a twisted metaphor for how society often tries to control female pain. What binds these two spirits is their connection to the vulnerabilities of women. The Penanggalan preys on the sacred act of childbirth, twisting it into something grotesque. The Pontianak embodies the trauma of maternal mortality, a very real horror in pre-modern Southeast Asia. Folklorists note how both legends flourished in regions where medical knowledge was scarce, serving as supernatural explanations for postpartum infections or miscarriages. Yet there's another layer. These stories gave women power. In cultures where female anger was suppressed, the Pontianak became its avatar, a warning to abusive husbands or negligent midwives. Even the Penanggalan's vinegar vat hints at domestic subversion, transforming an everyday household item into a weapon. Modern adaptations have softened neither spirit. Malaysian parents still warn children about the Pontianak's cry, and rural clinics sometimes display thorny branches, a nod to the Penanggalan's fear of puncture. These ghosts endure because they straddle the line between terror and tragedy. They're monsters, yes, but also echoes of real suffering, reminders that some wounds never heal cleanly. Because when the wind carries the scent of vinegar or a voice like a lost child's, it's not just fear that chills the blood, it's recognition. The water doesn't ripple, it heaves, as if something vast and unseen is rolling beneath the surface. This is the bunyip, Australia's most enigmatic nightmare, a creature as fluid in form as the swamps it calls home. To the Aboriginal peoples, the bunyip wasn't just a monster, it was a manifestation of the land's untamed heart, a warning whispered to children playing too close to billabongs or riverbeds. Descriptions vary wildly between tribes, a testament to its elusive nature. Along the Murray River, it was a hulking, dog-faced beast with a horse's tail, its roar echoing like thunder. In the arid interior, it became a feathered serpent, its belly glowing with an eerie bioluminescence. But one detail remained consistent: where the bunyip lurked, death followed. Fish vanished, swamps fell unnaturally still, and those who ventured too close, they simply didn't return. The bunyip's legend took a darker turn with European colonization. Settlers, already unnerved by the alien landscape, latched onto Aboriginal stories, blending them with their own fears. 19th century newspapers overflowed with sightings of farmers claiming to find massive, unidentifiable bones, or travelers swearing they'd seen a creature half alligator, half emu lurking in reed beds. In 1847, the Geelong Advertiser published an account of a bunyip skull, allegedly the size of a bullock's, discovered by a shepherd. Scientists later identified it as a mislabeled seal skeleton, but the damage was done. The bunyip became a colonial boogeyman, a scapegoat for drowned livestock and vanished settlers, a way to explain the unfamiliar dangers of a land that refused to be tamed. What makes the bunyip unique among cryptids is its cultural duality. To indigenous Australians, it was often a spiritual guardian, a symbol of nature's balance. Some creation stories depict it as a punisher of greed, dragging underwater those who took more fish than needed. Colonial accounts, however, stripped this nuance, reducing it to a mindless predator. Modern scholars suggest the bunyip might have roots in real fauna, extinct megafauna like Diprotodon, whose fossils Aboriginal communities could have encountered, or even nocturnal bitterns, whose booming calls sound eerily unearthly at dusk. Yet the bunyip endures because it answers a primal question: what waits in the dark water? Even today, remote communities report strange disturbances in lagoons, unexplained currents, or a sensation of being watched from below. The difference: now we have sonar, and sometimes when the equipment glitches over deep pools, even the most skeptical scientists hesitate before dismissing it as a glitch. Because in Australia, where the land itself feels alive, some legends refuse to stay buried. The soil in Romanian churchyards is packed tight, not just from time but from fear. This is where the Strigoi claw their way back, bloated with unholy hunger, their lips cracked from thirst for something thicker than water. Unlike the delicate vampires of Gothic fiction, these revenants are grotesque in their need, rising not from aristocratic ennui but from the raw terror of peasant folklore. To understand the Strigoi is to wade into the murky waters where history and nightmare swirl together. The roots of this legend tangle with Vlad Tepes himself, the ruthless 15th century prince who inspired Dracula. While the fictional count sipped wine from crystal, the real Vlad's brutality fed a different kind of myth. Impalement wasn't just punishment, it was a deterrent against the dead walking. Medieval Romanians believed those who died by violence, suicide, or without last rites risked becoming Strigoi, their souls trapped in reanimated corpses. These weren't seductive night stalkers, they were swollen, purple-skinned monstrosities, their bellies distended from gorging on blood and organs. Unlike the Moroi restless spirits who haunted dreams, the Strigoi had physical form, capable of tearing through village livestock or squeezing through windows to drain families dry. But the horror didn't stop at the grave. Living Strigoi witches, often seventh children born with calls or tails, were said to send their souls out at night to suffocate victims in their sleep. The line between myth and accusation blurred dangerously. In the 1800s, reports surfaced of peasants exhuming corpses, staking them through the heart, or stuffing mouths with garlic to stop their predation. Some accounts describe hearts boiled in nails, a ritual meant to neutralize the undead's power. What makes the Strigoi myth endure isn't just its gore, but its uncomfortable truth. These stories thrived in times of plague and famine, offering supernatural explanations for tuberculosis outbreaks or anemia. The blood-drinking motif may trace back to malnutrition-induced pica, where sufferers craved iron-rich substances. Yet the Strigoi's legacy stretches beyond folklore. Its name echoes in Romania's strigat, the scream of the owl, a bird long associated with death. Even today, some rural elders insist certain graves must be watched. Because when the earth shifts inexplicably or animals refuse to graze near a tomb, old fears whisper that not all hunger ends with a shovel's final thud. The knock at the door isn't gentle, it's a thunderous pounding that shakes the walls, followed by a guttural roar that sends children scrambling behind their parents. The Namahage have arrived, clad in tattered straw cloaks and grotesque wooden masks, their eyes bulging, their fanged mouths frozen in snarls. These towering figures storm into homes across Japan's Oga Peninsula every New Year's Eve, wielding wooden knives and screaming demands. Are there any lazy children here? They bellow, dragging their feet in a terrifying shuffle, their voices distorted into something not quite human. To outsiders, it might seem like a nightmare. But to the locals, it's a sacred tradition stretching back centuries, a ritual where fear becomes a gift. These demonic visitors aren't random monsters, they're enforcers of discipline, deeply rooted in Shinto beliefs. The Namahage represent deities from the nearby mountains, descending to purge households of bad habits and selfishness. The masks themselves are carved from aged wood, each one unique, with exaggerated features meant to mimic the wrath of nature. Straw cloaks symbolize the connection to agriculture, a reminder that laziness could mean starvation when the planting season comes. As the Namahage stomp through the house, parents play along, offering sake and mochai to appease them while the children tremble, until, finally, the demons leave with a promise to return if the kids misbehave. The moment the door closes, the terror transforms into relief, then laughter. The children have survived, and more importantly, they've learned. Beneath the spectacle lies a complex web of folklore and psychology. Some scholars trace the Namahage to ancient exorcism rituals, where masked figures drove out evil spirits before the new year. Others link them to the legend of Tsukumagami, objects that gain souls after 100 years, suggesting the straw cloaks and masks themselves carry spiritual weight. The ritual's timing is no accident either. New Year's Eve marks the threshold between past and future, a moment when the veil between worlds is thin. By confronting fear in a controlled setting, children build resilience, a lesson wrapped in the guise of a monster's visit. Modern Namahage have evolved without losing their edge. Tourists flock to Ogre for dramatized performances, but in traditional households, the ritual remains intimate and raw. Some families even personalize the scolding, with Namahage calling out specific misdeeds, skipped chores, poor grades blurring the line between theater and teaching. Yet the core message endures. Accountability has a face, and sometimes it wears a mask, because growth isn't just about rewards. It's about facing what scares you and realizing you're stronger because of it. So when the lanterns flicker and the knock comes next December, the children might still hide, but this time they'll know the demons aren't here to break them. They're here to make them better. Across continents and centuries, one truth emerges: our nightmares speak the same language. Whether it's the vengeful dead of Norse sagas or the shape-shifting tricksters of Filipino jungles, these legends share an eerie symmetry, as if humanity's deepest fears were woven from the same dark thread. At their core, they all grapple with three universal terrors: the horror of what lies beyond death, the consequences of breaking sacred taboos, and the supernatural's role as the ultimate enforcer of morality. Take the fear of the dead returning, a theme so pervasive it borders on instinct. The Draugr of Scandinavia, the Jiangshi of China, even the Strigoi of Romania all share a chilling premise: corpses that refuse to stay buried. But why? Anthropologists point to ancient burial rites as more than tradition. They were barriers, physical and spiritual, to keep the departed from crossing back. The Vikings weighed down graves with stones, the Chinese pinned corpses with nails, and Romanian peasants drove stakes through hearts. These weren't just rituals, they were desperate attempts to calm a primal anxiety, that death might not be the end but a door left slightly ajar. Then there's the punishment for taboos, where legends become cautionary tales etched in blood. The Wendigo isn't just a monster, it's the embodiment of cannibalism's curse, a warning against consuming the flesh of kin during famine. The Aswang preys on those who disrupt community harmony, targeting gossips or adulterers. Even the benevolent-seeming Púca punishes greed, trampling the fields of farmers who hoard crops. These stories didn't just scare, they policed societies where written laws were scarce. Break an unspoken rule, and something far worse than human justice might come calling. Most fascinating is how the supernatural serves as a moral compass, reflecting each culture's values. Japanese yokai like the Nopperabo expose the fragility of identity in a conformist society, while the Dybbuk of Jewish folklore embodies the weight of unconfessed sins. The bunyip, in its original Aboriginal context, wasn't a mindless killer but a guardian of ecological balance, attacking only those who overharvested or polluted waters. These creatures weren't arbitrary horrors. They were mirrors held up to human behavior, demanding accountability in ways earthly authorities couldn't. What binds these legends isn't just their monsters, but their purpose. They're the subconscious of civilizations, giving form to what couldn't be explained or controlled. Disease became the Penanggalan's curse, colonial oppression twisted into La Llorona's grief. Even today, these stories persist because the questions they grapple with remain unanswered. How do we live with the knowledge that our choices might haunt us? What debt do we owe the dead? And when the night feels too quiet, who's to say the old warnings weren't right all along? The true horror isn't that these legends exist, it's that we still need them. Because as long as there are shadows, humanity will keep filling them with faces. And perhaps that's the most terrifying thread of all, the realization that these creatures weren't just born from our imagination, but from our necessity. After all, a world without monsters might be far more frightening than one with them. At least when something has a name, you know how to survive it. These ancient horrors never really faded, they just learned new ways to haunt us. Look at any modern horror blockbuster, and you'll find echoes of the very legends our ancestors whispered around dying fires. The Wendigo stalks through films like Antlers, its gaunt frame and insatiable hunger repackaged for audiences who have never faced a northern winter. Japan's Yuki-onna drifts through anime and manga, her icy breath chilling spines in Demon Slayer and Mushishi. Even the Dybbuk, once confined to Kabbalistic texts, now slithers into mainstream terror, inspiring films like The Possession with its box office receipts proving one thing: our thirst for these stories is as unquenchable as the monsters themselves. But why? Why do these creatures, born from eras without electricity or antibiotics, still claw at our subconscious? Part of it lies in their adaptability. The Aswang isn't just a Filipino folktale anymore. It's the star of a hit Netflix series, its grotesque transformations reimagined for the digital age. La Llorona's mournful wail echoes through theme park attractions and seasonal haunted houses, where tourists line up to be terrified by a grief that's centuries old. These legends morph to fit contemporary fears, becoming metaphors for everything from climate change to systemic oppression. The Wendigo, once a warning against cannibalism, now symbolizes the rapacious greed of late-stage capitalism. The Preta, Buddhism's hungry ghost, finds new life in critiques of consumer culture, its needle throat a perfect allegory for endless, unsatisfied want. Tourism has become another lifeblood for these myths. In Iceland, visitors trek to the lava fields said to hide elves, while Scottish guides lead brave souls through glens where the Nuckelavee might still rise from the sea. Japan's Aokigahara forest, long tied to yokai and suicidal spirits, draws thousands, some seeking thrills, others a macabre connection to the past. These sites thrive because they offer something deeper than a scare, a tactile link to the stories that shaped civilizations. When you stand in the shadow of a crumbling Irish castle, hearing a local recount banshee lore, you're not just listening to a story, you're stepping into its bloodstream. Even science can't fully exorcise these specters. Geneticists tracing the origins of the chupacabra found mange-ridden coyotes, yet the sightings persist. Archaeologists debunk the curse of Tutankhamun, but museum visitors still hesitate near his golden mask. There's a comfort in the unknown, a perverse relief in admitting that some mysteries resist dissection. Modern medicine might explain away the Pontianac's deadly touch as postpartum infection, but in the humid dark of a Malaysian kampung, logic feels flimsy against the weight of centuries-old dread. Perhaps the most telling legacy lies in how these legends democratize fear. In a world of algorithms and artificial intelligence, where threats often feel impersonal and diffuse, these creatures remain intimate. They lurk in familiar places, our homes, our forests, even our reflections. They remind us that terror doesn't always wear a monstrous face. Sometimes it's the neighbor who smiles too wide, the childhood lullaby that suddenly sounds wrong, or the unshakable sense that the old stories weren't just stories after all. So next time your phone flickers with a notification about a new horror flick or a haunted travel destination, remember, the monsters never left. They've just been waiting for us to look back. The stories we tell in the dark aren't just about monsters, they're about us. Every culture, every civilization has spun its own nightmares into legend, not just to explain the unexplainable, but to confront the fears that gnaw at the edges of our existence. There's something primal in the way these tales endure, whispering across centuries, refusing to be forgotten. Whether it's the vengeful dead of ancient Scandinavia or the shape-shifting horrors of the Philippine jungles, these legends tap into a shared human truth. We're terrified of what we can't control, and will dress those fears in whatever shape makes them easier to face. Think about it, the Wendigo isn't just a monster, it's hunger given form, a warning from cultures that knew starvation intimately. The Dybbuk isn't just a ghost, it's the weight of unconfessed sins, a reminder that some debts follow us beyond the grave. Even the chupacabra, that bizarre latecomer to the pantheon of horrors, reflects modern anxieties about scientific experimentation and ecological collapse. These stories are more than entertainment, they're survival tools passed down like heirlooms of dread. They teach us where the boundaries lie, what happens when we cross them, and how to navigate a world that's far stranger than we'd like to admit. And here's the thing, we're still telling them. Every urban legend, every creepypasta, every viral, true horror story shared in hushed tones online, they are all descendants of these ancient warnings. The settings change, the monsters evolve, but the core remains the same. We still fear the dark. We still wonder what's watching us from the edges of our vision. And we still spin those fears into stories because giving them shape makes them just a little easier to bear. So now we'd love to hear from you. What legends haunt your hometown? What tales did your grandparents whisper to keep you in line? Share them in the comments because every culture has its monsters, and every monster has a story waiting to be told. And if you've enjoyed this journey through the shadows, don't forget to subscribe. There are always more doors to open, more histories to unearth, and more nightmares waiting just beyond the firelight. After all, the oldest stories remind us of something vital. The dark isn't empty, it's listening, and so are we.